Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis, and this is where we talk honestly about midlife, hormones, mindset, and becoming who you want to be next. Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis, and today I'm talking with Michele Scherr. Michele is a former defence nursing officer turned precision health practitioner working with high-functioning women in midlife who feel like their body has stopped responding the way that it used to. Her work focuses on helping women understand the biological shifts behind persistent symptoms like fatigue, poor sleep, and weight changes, moving them away from generic advice and toward precise, personalised, and sustainable strategies that align with how their body actually works. Welcome, Michele. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, Terry. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you support women in perimenopause?
Absolutely, absolutely. As you've already mentioned, my background is nursing. So emergency nursing, critical care nursing, and when I left full-time service in the Defence Force, I stumbled across precision health coaching, which really kind of played to my bent for anatomy and physiology, which was something that I was always into, and being able to help people at the same time. The work that I do now is really focused on women in midlife, so mid-30s, 40s and up. These women that I work with are capable, they're responsible, they know what to do, and they're intelligent ladies, you know. If there's something wrong, they'll research it. One of the things that they start to notice, though, as they get into midlife is that their body isn't responding the way it used to. So when they were teenagers, when they're in their 20s, all of that sort of thing. So rather than giving them another plan to follow, I help them to understand what's happening for them now, what levers they need to pull so that their body does respond. Now, there's a whole field, medical field, research field called Epigenetics, and that looks at how your environment shapes how your body functions. And the foundation of it is that your DNA is a blueprint, but day-to-day life will actually shape how that DNA functions or how it shows to the world. Things like sleep and stress and overall load that you carry, so emotional load and responsibilities and that sort of thing, will influence how your body responds to your environment. And this is where it becomes really important to understand that the body isn't fixed, it's not static, it's actually quite dynamic and responsive to everything around it. We're changing all the time. And as women, I think we know to a point that, you know, our bodies change. We know that as we move from children's to being a child to adolescence, that we're going to go through puberty, and we know that, you know, at some point we're going to go through menopause, but our body is actually slowly changing a lot of the time. And so when I work with women, what I'm doing is I'm looking at things like their nervous system, their energy capacity, their daily rhythm, or how their environment is interacting with or impacting their biology. So the goal for the clients that I work with is very much around clarity and reducing that sense of internal friction. So helping these women to feel steady and capable and in control again.
That makes total sense, especially when it comes to being in control of our bodies. We all want to be able to be in control, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And it's quite, I'm going to say discombobulating because that's a favourite word of mine, but it's quite confusing at times, and it kind of throws you off when, you know, you're doing everything that you've always done, but it's not getting the same results. You know, you might be eating really well, you might be moving really well, and all of a sudden it's not getting the same results. And you're kind of like, well, what's changed? And that's where I kind of come in.
And can you give me an example?
Sure.
How our environment can impact? So what are some of the things that our environment can impact, and then what can we do about it?
Sure. So let me give you Let me give you a few case studies. So the work that I do, I develop a profile for each person because each person is an individual, and we hear that time and time again. But in the medical system, we still treat people with standardized care. So if someone presents with a cold, we say, okay, well, this is what you've got to do. If they present with chest pain, this is what you've got to do. If they present with, I'm struggling with my weight, okay, this is what you've got to do.
So if
But
this, then that.
yeah, that's right.
Right.
Exactly right. But the work that I do looks at them as an individual. And okay, as an individual, what are all the inputs? So if you're a person who is designed to move a lot, you've got a lot of energy and your drive in life is all around movement. And I'm sure you and all of your listeners will know someone. We typically call them like they've got ants in their pants. They just can't sit still. And that's actually a biological design that they just can't sit still. Whereas you've got, and they tend to be quite a muscular kind of athletic build. Then I'm going to use another woman who is a bigger build. So we're talking about bigger bones, bigger muscles, a larger build. So if you think typically kind of South Sea Islander build. Now, the woman one that I'm talking about, what she needs is she needs to be eating 5 times a day, 5 or 6 times a day, just small meals, because she's fueling. Okay, she's fueling that energy, she's fueling that movement. Whereas woman number 2 with the bigger build, if she eats 5 times a day, she's actually putting her system under stress because it doesn't need to be fed 5 times a day. What she might need, and typically there's 2 kind of body types that I deal with that are the larger builds. What she might need is back to the old adage of breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. Or she might actually need to do intermittent fasting. That might be the right thing for her. And through the profile that I build, I can actually say to her, this is the pattern of eating. So often it's for the ladies that I'm working with, it's not really about, or often for the ladies I work with, it's not about the calories they're intaking, because most often they're taking in the right amount of calories. It's where it's spread across the day, and that's driven by hormones, which is an individual thing.
So listening to you, to interrupt you, sorry,
yeah,
but
no.
listening to you, this is all sounding very somatic type. Is that kind of similar to what you're talking about?
So tell me more about somatic types.
So somatic type is whether it is definitely with regards to the person's predisposition in their body. So whether they have long, thin muscle fibers to go with long, thin levers, arms and legs, think marathon runner.
Yes.
Then you have like the hourglass, which is, so the marathon runner is an ectomorph, for example. The
Correct.
hourglass person who is more of a Kathy Freeman type body for medium distant running, so short to medium distance, not long distance. So medium chain loss muscle fibers, medium chain bone structure. And then you have someone like an Olympic lifter or a sumo wrestler who is more kind of tubular in shape, where their shoulders, waist, and their hips are pretty much in alignment. And so they're more designed with short, thick muscle fibers and bone structure.
Correct.
And so then that's their skeletal design, which then designs their muscles, which then designs their hormones, their nutritional requirement, and then obviously their energy, etc. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Beautiful. That's a really good example of part of what I'm talking about, part of the foundation.
Perfect.
So we're talking about, you mentioned the ectomorph, and then there's the mesomorph and the endomorph, and then there's the crossovers between those 3
absolutely,
primaries.
because there could be hybrids. Yeah, correct.
Correct. So, and we know that if someone, so typically, like, we use a circle that's got 360 degrees. There's 360 generic as it can be profiles, which when it was being taught to practitioners, it was kind of like, too much, it's too detailed, it's too much. So they grouped it into 6 kind of types. And from there we had, the ectomorph, we had the ectomesomorph, we have the mesomorph and endomorph and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But while they're good umbrellas to give us a cluster of tendencies, it's not the final story. The final story is the person sitting in front of you.
Yes,
and
of course.
because environment has shaped them. So if you go back to twin studies, for example, and this is where it really all began, was the nature versus nurture and, all of that sort of thing. So the frameworks that I use, the basis that I use, brings a profile that is individually that person. And from that, we can tell what their tendencies are likely to be. We can tell how their brain processes information, how they like to receive information. If we're looking at lifestyle, some people, as I was saying before, some people are driven by movement. So, and that's not always physical movement. That can be progress as well. So progress in mental progress in how they're thinking about a situation. It could be financial progress. It could be all sorts of things as well as movement, because they do need to move. Then we've got another subset of people who really need to connect. They really need to know that that other person that is sitting in front of them, or the people who are sitting in front of them, thinks the best of them. They want that connection. They're driven by that love hormone, oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a shot of oxytocin. We often talk about dopamine and adrenaline and that sort of thing.
Oxytocin's my favourite hormone, just FYI.
Yeah,
so you've got my attention.
Because you feel so connected, right? You feel like that person thinks the best of you. And it's just wonderful. So there's the group of people, and then they have a group of tendencies, which allows us to kind of, if you display this, how does this sit with you? And that sort of thing. And then we've got another group of people who are really driven by nurturing. And they want to nurture others. And you'll see them, it's all about their family. And for the coaches out there that might be listening, these might be your clients who really struggle to set goals about themselves.
I know a few of them.
They can set goals around their family. They can set, everything seems to be about everybody else. And you kind of like, let's bring this back to you. What about you? And they go, they just can't do it. They struggle because they're driven by the need to nurture. And then we've got another group of people who are driven by the hormone, predominantly driven by the hormone serotonin. Now, all of our bodies have all of these hormones. We have clusters of people who are more sensitive, who are more driven by particular hormones. And we have another group of people who are driven by dopamine. So I often think of the triathletes, the long distance, kind of those sporting people who like to track everything. They have their Excel spreadsheets and they're tracking how much distance they're doing and speeds and all of this sort of thing. But they can really put pain aside because they're focused on their mission. They're focused on achieving, and, they're focused on climbing that next mountain. Well, why did you want to do that? Because it was there, not for any.
Why not?
And exactly. Why not? Why did you want to do that ultra triathlon? Because I could. And, they really put the work. And there's obviously downsides to all of these personalities as well. But when it comes to women in midlife, understanding how they're built, how they're designed. So saying to someone who is a larger build that you're built perfectly to lift weights, as opposed to someone who's a lighter frame and saying to them, you can lift weights, absolutely, but you'll never be an Olympic weightlifter because you're just not structurally designed that way. So let's look at the strengths in your body and your mind. Let's not change your environment. Let's mold your environment to bring out your strengths. And life all of a sudden becomes so much easier, joy, comfortable. Things just flow.
So
And
it's not
beautiful.
necessarily that they're doing something wrong. It's that they may be doing something that's not aligned with their specific body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Gotcha.
perfect example of this. So coming from a defense background, now I'm a bigger build. I have structurally, I have predominantly endomorphic expression of my genes.
Mm.
Um, I've done a marathon. I've done all the training, all of that sort of thing. I actually quite enjoy running. I'm never going to be competitive, but I enjoy running. But I also enjoy lifting. Yeah. So choosing things that are aligned to you. So with that defense background and with my body, the way my body's designed, I'm actually designed to have a slow start of a morning. And so the thing that I don't want to do is routinely raise my cortisol levels so far that it takes ages for them to come back down. So cortisol is actually what wakes you up of a morning, but it's also a stress hormone, right? So when I was in defense, my habit was to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I would go and do HIIT sessions. I would go and eat a full breakfast. I would do all of these things and always wondering why I don't feel so great and I'm having to push through every day. That's because I was putting too much stress on my body too soon. There are other bodies, they thrive under that, but not my body. So once I'd left defense and I'd found this framework for viewing life and I started to institute the practices, now I have a fairly easy morning. I get up. I still get up, 6:30 or so, take the dog for a walk. So I get that morning sunlight to help with the circadian rhythm and all that sort of stuff. But nice and easy. I don't have breakfast until after 8 o'clock and I'll have lots of fluids because that's what my body needs. Oh my goodness, all of a sudden I've got energy to get through the day. Whereas previously I was pushing and I was eating lots of sugary stuff to keep me going.
Mm.
And it was like I was chasing and pushing all the time into burnout. Whereas now it's kind of like, I can shape my day. And I do take that I'm in a privileged position where I can shape my day. But with my clients, what I try to do is go, okay, well, actually, let's look at your routines. How can we make them as stress-free as possible? We're not going to be able to eliminate stress, and that's a good thing because we need a certain amount of stress.
Mm-hmm.
However, how can we decrease stress so that it's a smoother morning for you if that's what they're needing? Otherwise, it's like, okay, well, if they're, to use that contrast again for that person that needs to move all the time, okay, well, you get up, you do what you need to do, and let's put a HIIT session on for you at 7 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, yeah, I'm good to go for the day. They're getting that energy up and they're raising their levels because for them, they process the stress hormones really quickly. Whereas for a body like mine, it takes a lot longer. A body like theirs is very prone to like oxidation and that sort of thing because they're using so much energy. A body like mine is very prone to metabolic issues. So weight gain, liver problems, diabetes, that sort of thing. We know that through the way, and we get that through the profiles and the way the bodies present and how the DNA exhibits and how it shows you what's on the outside.
So there's nothing wrong specifically with a person if they're not an early bird in quotation marks. So I know I'm an early riser because I start my day really early. I start with coaching anywhere from 5:30 onward. So I'm up anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30, and that suits me just fine. I've always been an early riser. I've never been one to sleep until 12 o'clock on a Saturday or anything like that. And I often get people saying to me, oh my God, how are you so awake first thing in the morning? But then come 9:30, I'm a zombie.
Oh, yes, you are.
right? So I'm an absolute zombie. And then you have other people who are like, man, there's nothing awake about them until like 11 o'clock. And then they're buzzing, at 11 p.m. they're still buzzing. And so what you were saying based on these profiles is that's all part of DNA. So that's all cool.
That's
Is that correct?
exactly right. That's exactly right. And when the women that I work with, when they start to realize that, and then they start to go, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? And that's
Okay.
when we really start to strike gold.
So basically what you're doing is you're consulting with the person, not the symptom, not the ailment, not the issue, not the concern.
Correct. Because
Right. Okay. I'm with
like
you.
it's a message.
If this podcast is resonating, I'm Coach Terry Batsakis, a nutrition, mindset, and health coach for women navigating perimenopause and midlife. I support women in managing hormonal symptoms, feel more at home in their bodies, and move through this phase with confidence and clarity. If you need support navigating midlife, you can find out more about working with me at terrybatsakis.com.au.
Those symptoms, those ailments, the concerns are a message of a system that is under pressure,
Right.
a system that is under stress. And then we look at, okay, well, what part of the environment is causing that? And it's probably worth noting here too, we've been talking about how the body is designed and how the body is shaped and what you can see. But the mind can actually quite often be very different. What the mind does, because the mind will push the body to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mind over matter. We've always, mind over matter. It's only mind over matter. However, when you can, in my practice, while I speak to the mind, I work to what the body needs. So it's very much about communicating to the mind, because we're shaped by social imperatives, we're shaped by our social conditioning and in Australia, we're very much shaped around the achievement mindset. Whereas some people, for them, it's about love. And making them achieve all the time is so stressful for them, because that's not what they're about.
They're connection people.
They're connection people.
Mm-hmm. Or
And
nurturers.
yeah, exactly right. So it's about, so even if their body says, so a nurturer, even if their body is nurturing, they may have adapted their mind to think in achievement terms. And it's all about achieving. So they're pushing their body, pushing their body. And they start to see symptoms come up. So whether it be weight that won't shift, whether it be fatigue, that sort of thing, their brain is pushing their body to do something their body's not set up to do. Speaking the language that the mind's going to understand that looks after the body. Because the body is the foundation.
Right. So if we actually look at some of the symptoms that women will be coming to you for, there's a lot of biological changes happening in midlife. We're talking energy, weight gain, recovery, etc. Can you talk us through some of those kind of changes? And then what are some things that you would suggest for the different types of bodies, personalities, etc.?
Yeah. Okay. So there are going to be changes that lots of women will say, I'm having hot flushes, or I'm having weight that won't shift, or fatigue. My energy levels just aren't what they used to be, things like that. So there are going to be symptoms that are common, but the reason behind those symptoms, what's causing those symptoms, are likely to be different. So as I was saying, to use that energy person again, that lady that needs lots of energy, and this was actually one of my clients when we first started working together. She went away on a trip, and it was sailing, and so she wasn't in charge of food, and the person in charge of food decided that intermittent fasting was the best. So
Okay.
everyone was intermittent fasting. She was anxious, she was hungry, she was hangry. She just, oh my God, I just feel so bad. So catering to what she needed, because she then started having energy dips, and she's so used to being able to move and having energy on tap. So catering to those energy dips and catering to the fatigue and all of that sort of thing actually came back to the way she was eating. Whereas to go directly to the opposite, opposing that, someone with a bigger frame who's experiencing weight and weight fluctuations or weight that won't shift, or is experiencing fatigue and that sort of thing, it can often come down to what's happening for them from the gastrointestinal tract. So is their liver okay? How are they digesting foods? Are they eating the right foods? So an endomorphic body, so the bigger boned, bigger frame, tends to thrive on vegetable-based diets. It's not to take out protein, but predominantly vegetables with protein thrown in. Whereas the energy people, they need protein to fuel those muscles, so they're more protein with vegetables thrown in as opposed. So it really comes down to, if something's happening for you, the symptom might be the same, but finding where it's coming from can be quite different. We've even got people, and you may know them, they tend to be really, I'm not going to say frail, but they tend to be really light. So you talked about the marathon runner earlier. So they tend to be really small boned, small muscles, that sort of thing.
Quite slender.
Very slender, very slight. They need warm foods. They need a lot of warm foods, because if you, so for someone who is eating raw foods, vegan kind of diet, that will add an extra stress to their body, and they will continue to lose weight. They won't be able to hold weight because their body's under stress. Whereas if you warm them up and you give them warm foods, even if they're still vegan, give them warm foods, it's soothing to them. And their body will appreciate it and start to thrive.
It's interesting because some bodies actually gain weight with the stress, and
Correct.
then some bodies lose weight. And
Correct.
so the ones that are gaining weight and looking at the ones that don't, going, how come I'm gaining and you're not? And the ones that are not are like, oh, I want to gain weight. How come you are and I'm not? So
Yeah,
we
exactly
want
right.
what we don't have.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So yeah, so when it comes to the symptoms, as I said, the symptoms can present the same, but what's driving it tends to be how the DNA is interacting with the environment.
Interesting. So what happens if a woman feels like their body's actually stopped responding to stuff that they've done all the time that's always worked for them, and all of a sudden it's not? What sort of things do you look for then to adjust?
Yeah. Okay. So first thing I want to say here, this builds over time. The body is wonderful and it's awesome at adaptation. So adapting to its environment. So
Homeostasis.
yeah, absolutely. So when it gets to a point though where it can no longer adapt, its coping strategies have run out, that's when the symptoms the symptoms appear. That's when people notice. The symptoms have most likely been there for quite a while, or have been building for quite a while. So when women say, let's take for instance, I got to my mid to late 30s and all of a sudden I was eating well, I was moving, I was doing everything I'd always done to stay in shape. But all of a sudden I've got all this weight that it just came on and I can't get rid of it. And so we often blame perimenopause or menopause coming. And yes, we can do that. However, what's changed is we've been stressing the body. The body has been coping, and I'm going to put this in terms of capacity. So each of us has a biological capacity. So I have a certain bucket, if you like, of things I can take on. You have a different bucket. Everybody has a different bucket. And we start, when we're teenagers, as we leave home and we become adults, we start throwing responsibilities in there and caring and jobs and all of this sort of stuff into our capacity bucket. And then by the time we're getting to our mid to late 30s, that bucket's looking pretty darn full. And then the bucket goes from glass to plastic, i.e. our hormones change. Something changes, right?
Good
And the
analogy. I like that.
plastic has a little bit more give, and we're trying to have the same responsibilities. And then something happens. We're like, oh, yes, okay, we have to do this now. And so we throw it in the bucket, and all of a sudden everything's overflowing. So in that analogy, that's kind of, okay, now I've noticed that I've got all this weight that I can't lose. Your bucket has changed. Everything, but the responsibilities, what you're putting in that bucket hasn't changed. So when I'm working with women, we look at, okay, what's the environment? What's happening for you? Where are you at? What's your body telling you? And what do you potentially need to let go so that you can embrace what's coming? And I think,
how difficult is that for ladies? Letting
oh
things
my
go.
gosh.
They're just like, let's take that one on. Sure, I'll do that too. And I'll take that one on. What? Let go. No, And so we're in this tug of war. So you've just spoken to ladies about something that we all go, so how do you tackle that?
And you're right, it's the most challenging part, particularly for women who are socially conditioned that if you love someone or if you love something, you'll do anything. Right?
Give.
Yes, exactly right. And that give. And even though on one hand we're being told, the adage of, put your own oxygen mask on first, and then in practice, if you go to do that, you've got this little voice telling you, but you love them, so you must put them first, not yourself. So if you just get up half an hour earlier, if you just cut out your lunchtime and you go and do this activity instead of doing lunch, if you just alter your day, and before you know it, like I said, that bucket is overflowing. It's just, how do you tackle it? One small step at a time. And that is the biggest challenge for a lot of my clients, is because they're highly capable, they're very intelligent, they're incredibly responsible, and they're like, but I can't let anything go. I've got to keep juggling all these balls.
We own everything. It's all
And
ours.
that's exactly right. And it's like, okay, you can do that. Absolutely. On one hand, you can do that. On the other hand, you're telling me that these issues are coming up. What's more important to you? And that's the point where, and it comes up differently for different people, but that's really the point that we get to, is what's more important to you. For some people, it's about being around when their grandchildren, to have grandchildren and being able to get on the floor and play with their grandchildren and that sort of thing. For others, it's about career and it's about continuing to achieve. And you can't, if you get to that spot and you need to make a decision, it really comes down to your personal values. And that's a deep conversation that I have with all of my clients at some point when they're ready.
Values. It always comes down to values. Almost all conversations that I have, somehow values comes into it. I think my clients are ready to explode with the amount of time the word values comes out of my mouth.
But isn't it amazing how many women don't deeply know what really matters to them? They know what matters to those around them, but they don't necessarily know.
They don't actually stop to think, because I guess we were raised in an era where you're not supposed to worry about yourself. You don't
Better to
love
give than
yourself because
receive.
that you're a love me do. Like that was a term way back from my early teens. I'm such a love me do. You have to always ensure that you're worrying about what anybody else is doing and supporting them and, you know, all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff. So now we get to this phase in our lives where all of a sudden everyone's telling the ladies, no, now you have to set some boundaries. You've got to make time up for you. And so there's this conflict. So,
Mm.
yeah, that's definitely a challenge for ladies.
Yeah,
That one I know
absolutely.
well from the ladies that I work with too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got one lady in particular that's been with me for a while, and it's taken her a while to get to a point where we can have that conversation because she has filled her schedule with work, full-time work, family, all of that sort of stuff. And she's like, okay, I'll just do this on top. So, I'll just add this in and add this in. And I'm like, no, stop. We need to let something go to add this in. Otherwise, you're just putting more stress on your system. So that capacity, you're over most women in midlife and beyond. By the time they get to midlife, they're at capacity. And then there's more demands put on them and they're overflowing. And whilst you might be able to do that for a short term, and in military we call it as a surge capacity, you can't do it long term. You'll fall over, you'll get, your body won't cope. You will become unwell.
Burnout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the less serious, if I can say that, less serious, because it can lead into life-changing illnesses.
Well, I know a few years ago for me, I ended up with chronic fatigue and then
Yes.
I battled adrenal fatigue for over a decade as a result of it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
something that I don't want for any woman because that's horrible to live with. So
And
absolutely.
you've got your brain telling you, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do something
Your
else.
body's going, good night, Irene, see you later.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think we have a whole generation of women who are in that position of having to fight what they've been socially conditioned with and what does my body actually need.
Mm,
And that validation and permission to acknowledge my body actually needs rest, or my body actually needs whatever it happens to need, connection or warm food or whatever it happens to be for that person. It can actually be quite validating. And a lot of my clients describe it as feeling free, that they can be
yeah.
themselves.
You were talking and the word liberating just came into my mind. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that has definitely been very enlightening, looking at it from such a different perspective as well, because I obviously work with same client base as you do, and it's just really looking at it from a different perspective. And I know that that's valuable for me, but I know it's definitely going to be valuable for our listeners as well. Before we wrap it up, if you could give one message to the ladies in this conversation that is just going to be a take home, maybe that they can implement or something to think about, or what would be one take home message for them?
What I'd really like your listeners to be thinking about is if they are experiencing, the fatigue, the weight that just won't shift, the energy fluctuations, that sort of thing, I want them to know that their body's not failing. It's responding the best it can in the situation it's in. When you understand that your body's trying to do the best it can, and your brain is potentially overriding and pushing you through, you can then make changes. And you'll see the results. Maybe not instantly. For some people, it's faster than others, but it creates an entirely different experience for midlife and beyond.
I call it learning to speak body.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I
then
love that.
when your body actually is communicating, the body is communicating all the time. So
Absolutely.
if it's passing wind regularly, you know, oh yeah, there's something wrong. If you're burping regularly, oh yeah, there's something going. If you're bloating, that's your body communicating. So the moment you
Yeah.
start to learn how to read these, interpret these, and speak body, then the world changes.
Absolutely,
Is
Terry.
that what you're saying too? Is this what you're? Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Terry. Yeah, exactly right.
Liberating. That's all there
Yeah.
is. Because
Yeah.
then you have input, which is whatever it is that you're doing, filling your bucket. And so then you have message from your body, e.g. bloating. And then you have output, which is, okay, what am I doing with this information? Am I adjusting it or binning it? Which hopefully you're not binning it. Hopefully you are adjusting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're spot on. You're spot on.
Michele, it's absolutely been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to hear a completely different perspective of how to consult with a person and not just focus on all the symptoms and really just working with the individual person and all of their needs rather than just looking at their symptoms and masking the symptoms. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. I know I've picked up lots of little golden nuggets from chatting with you today, so hopefully our listeners have as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Been a pleasure. So that wraps up another episode of the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again. Tune in again next week and don't forget to subscribe and please share the love with all the other ladies that you know are going to benefit. Stay awesome until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. Join me next time for more honest conversations about midlife and what's possible from here.